When you think about advocacy as a physician leader, how do you put it into practice?
You know, I think that can be kind of challenging, sort of how to shift from. So advocacy can be about problem identification, amplifying the problem, bringing eyes to the problem. That's an important type of advocacy. Another type of advocacy is thinking about, sort of, as we mentioned, the players and the stakeholders, right? Because usually, in addition, sort of, to identifying the problem, the next step is, well, which stakeholders have the right levers to address the problem, whether that's government levers and legislation. I'm thinking back to the pandemic, or whether it's actually something very local. And so the way I think about it is I do a lot of stakeholder mapping in my head, like who actually could make a difference. And then, second, how do I actually get in front of them? And the third thing is, how do we values align? So I feel like with any sort of advocacy, a lot of it is about that. Well, are we grounded in a basic principle? Let's say if it's about health equity, are we grounded in the idea of equitable access? I mean, generally we are, right? Are we grounded in the idea that we're not really where we need to be, either because we don't have enough data, in the case of race-based data, or because people are telling us, or we're experiencing on the ground, that there's this issue. And I think when you kind of align the values, you'll find that you're actually not that far apart, right? And then you can
Mhm.
start solutioning. And I think what happens is you have to come in without a lot of preconceived notions when you're doing advocacy work. You have to, at your heart, believe that the people who are across the table from you care about the issue. They just have a different perspective. So I think with any solutioning, to be honest, with any leadership, a lot of it really is about aligning, like being making values based decisions and aligning on what's in the art of the possible. And to be honest, when we do that, we open up a bit of a generative space, right, Kevin? So what I might think is a solution might actually not be the solution, but it doesn't matter because we agree on the problem. So we'll figure out the
Mhm.
solution together. So that's sort of how I approach advocacy, I would say, for the most part.
Yeah, and I think that approach helps because it's not necessarily an approach based on blame, right? And I think that we
Absolutely.
often, as a government funded or government led healthcare system, like it becomes very pragmatically again, a clinicians versus the administration, and then the problem is both sides are needed. So
Absolutely.
if you're throwing arrows over this perceived gap, it doesn't work well together, right? I saw a Facebook post this morning of somebody whose wife's a nurse and complaining that the CEO got a raise,
Mm,
and that they gave the nurses free garlic bread, right? And it's like, you know this lack of understanding of, there's one CEO,
yeah.
right? And they have a certain responsibility and should be paid accordingly. And you have, but nurses who everybody should always be paid more, but
Yeah.
that's not the world we live in or the system we live in, right? So, this notion of, if you're not seeing the patient, you're not needed, right? So it's an interesting thing to balance advocacy with, with an understanding, right?
Mhm.
So